If you look at the bottom of your screen, you should see a button to click on to see closed captions that are provided by our wonderful captioner, Lauren Schechter. Please also click on mute so that we don't hear background noises such as sirens and dogs barking from your house or apartment. Later on, when we do invite people to speak, I will ask you to unmute and then mute again when you're finished speaking. I would particularly like to welcome new members as well as non-members. In this virtual format, it's difficult to get to know the new chapter members, so please feel free to reach out to me if you have questions about the HLAA or about audiological services. My email address is jtaylor@hearinglossnyc.org. I should also mention that we're recording this. When the recording is ready, we will post a YouTube link on our website for others who've missed it tonight. Tonight, we will be sharing stories about how we've been challenged during the pandemic and how we've coped with those challenges. Our stories will focus on three basic areas: masks, technology, and advocacy. To provide some structure to the discussion, Katherine Bouton will do a brief PowerPoint introduction to each section. After each section of her presentation, we will open things up for 15 minutes for your stories, for you to share your stories and ask questions. We do request that you only discuss the category that Katherine has just discussed and that you limit your comments to 2 minutes so that others will have a chance to speak. If you wish to speak on that topic, please enter your name in the chat box and I will call on people in the order that their names are entered, and I will alert speakers when you have 15 seconds left in your time. As past president of this chapter, Katherine needs no introduction to many of us. Nevertheless, her background is so distinguished that I want to tell you a little bit about her. She has had progressive bilateral hearing loss since age 30, and she received a cochlear implant in her left ear in 2009, wears a hearing aid in her right ear. Not only is she the immediate past president of the New York City chapter, she has also served on HLAA's National Board of Trustees from 2012 to 2020. A gifted writer and researcher about topics related to hearing loss, she is the author of Shouting Won't Help, a memoir of adult onset hearing loss, and Smart Hearing, a guide to living with hearing loss. Her blog, Smart Hearing, appears on her website and formerly appeared on AARP Online. Her professional career includes 2 decades as an editor of the New York Times as well, where her area of expertise included the intersection of science, health, and social issues. I also want to say that she's a valued friend and has been a valued mentor since June when I succeeded her as chapter president. With that, Katherine, you can start your presentation.
Okay, thank you. David, would you put the slide up? Okay, this is the first, actually, we're still seeing John here. I think we should see my face, right?
We do.
Yeah.
If you're on speaker view.
Okay. I'm on.
I see you.
I'm on speaker, but I'm still seeing you, not me. All right. Well, now I have 4 people. Okay, well, that's all right. John, thank you so much. John actually joined our chapter fairly recently, and right from the start, everybody on the board had their eye on him as a potential chapter board member. And it was a short wooing process. We quickly got him on the board. What took a little bit longer was persuading him that when my 2 terms as president were up, that he would make a great president. And we were right. He has made a great president. He's just coming up on the end of his first year. So thank you, John. That's great. This meeting is usually held in person in our meeting space, and it's a little odd to be having this one online because so much of it has to do with how we relate to each other, how we answer each other's questions, being able to see each other. So I hope this is going to work as an online format. So I decided to call my talk Lessons from the Pandemic, Challenges, of which there were many, and Unexpected Benefits, which I think there were also many of them. David is going to move my slides along. So David, new slide. Okay, so the first section in this talk is going to be about masks, which I think every single person here has probably had their difficulties with over the past 10 months, 12 months, whatever, however long it's been now. In New York City, where we all live, masks are required outdoors at all times. If you're wearing a mask, it is very hard. It's not hard for you, the person wearing a mask, but if the person you're speaking to is wearing a mask, it is very difficult to read lips. And it has caused, I think, probably the biggest problem for all of us during this period of COVID, except for the fact of the illness itself. But I think most of us have found communication, at least initially, especially when we were trying to communicate the way we used to, quite difficult. Slide, David. So masks come in many different forms, as you can see, homemade masks, surgical masks, the kind that the two people at the bottom are wearing, and none of them are any easier to see or hear from than the others, with one exception, which I'll get to. Another of the problem with masks is people who wear dark glasses with them, and several people in this slide have dark glasses on, because when you lip read, you basically read the whole person's face. And if you can't see their eyes, you really can't see their expressions. So these people are as good as wearing, a whole thing over their head. They're very, very difficult to see with sunglasses on. So I think, for those of us who have been involved with people out of doors and out of our apartments, this is a big issue. Go on, David. Slide. Okay, so I find that masks, I've been out a lot during this period for one reason or another. And the encounters that I've had that have really flummoxed me go from the absurd to really serious. For instance, a parking garage attendant, when my husband was sick this year and I spent a lot of time taking him to hospitals. So I would try to park and the parking garage attendant would look at me and say something, and then he would shout at me, and then he would point, and all I could say is what, and then go and hope that I had found the space he was telling me to go to. My dog was sick at one point and I had to go to the vet, and because of COVID regulations, I had to meet the vet in the parking lot. And she had on a mask and I had on a mask. I still don't know what she told me at that point, but my dog seems to be fine. I would go pick up a prescription at the pharmacy, and the pharmacist would say something, probably, date of birth, but I would miss that, in fact, no matter how standard it is. So basically my life in the past year or so has definitely been the word that I have said the most. What, over and over and over again. Slide. Okay, so the FDA has approved 2 clear masks, and we now have some of those available. I have some. Tony Iacolucci ordered some. They are really quite a bit better because they show the whole face. There have been some homemade ones that are harder to use. They don't show as much of the face. I'm actually not sure if this picture is of the FDA approved mask or not, but the problem with a mask like this is that they have to be worn by the person that you need to hear. You can't hand the person your mask unless you're willing to part with it forever, because you just can't swap masks around. It's completely unhygienic. So to be really effective, Clear masks have to be part of the regular part of the medical supply chain, and hospitals, and doctors' offices, and dentists' offices. And Tony Acolucci in our chapter has been working really hard on this, and some other people have too. Tony might want to talk a little bit in the discussion section if she's here about the kinds of things, kinds of successes she's had so far. I think clear masks, people do now know they exist. They know to ask for them. You can even ask for them before you go to an appointment. And or you could bring one if it's a regular doctor that you see a lot and ask him if he'll wear it when you're there. Can I have the next slide? There are other solutions to masks, and you don't need any props. My next section is going to be about props. But good communication strategies are as important, if not more important, with masks as they are with regular life with hearing loss. As Ruth Bernstein, one of our members, says, don't talk till I can see the white of your eyes. That means face me, make sure that I'm looking at you, and don't let your attention wander someplace else. Don't look down, don't look over my head at somebody else. So good communication strategies include everything from, making sure that whoever you're talking to is not outlined by a bright light, to making sure that you're not standing next to a fan that's whirring or in any other way interfering with your ability to listen, because masks also make the lower the decibel level, and the surgical masks lower the decibel level even more than the regular masks do. So it's very, very important to remember good communication strategies. And as always, it's good to have a paper and pen available, because when it doesn't work in any other way, you can always write it down. And then the third thing is just to always be honest, to tell people what the situation is right from the start, and to be insistent. The next slide, David. Okay, so this is going to be our first chat session. And what we were hoping is that people would offer their own experiences during the pandemic, using how they got around the mask problem specifically. And then we'll go into technology in the next session. So if you can avoid talking about technology here, and more like things that you were able to do that help to avoid masks, that would be good. So David's going to take the PowerPoint off the screen so we can all see each other, I think. And John will call on people.
So just to clarify the procedure here, if you have a story you want to share, a question you want to ask, or a comment you want to make on this topic about masks, please type your name into the chat box, and I will call on you and give you 2 minutes each. So while we're waiting for that to happen, I think I did see that Tony is here, and okay, we have a couple, but and I will get to you. I will talk to Tony later and see if she has some comments about masks. But Rick Savadow, unmute.
Hello, can you hear me now? I just want to relate a COVID, and I had to register. I walked up to a plexiglass screen, and there was a woman with a mask on behind it, and she had an accent. So I was really struggling, and we went back and forth, and was going very slowly, and I just said, "I'm really sorry, but I am hard of hearing." And a woman who was standing nearby, behind the plexiglass, also came around and stood next to me and made sure that I heard everything. So I should have spoken up right away, because it would have been a lot easier. But they were happy to do that, but I didn't volunteer the information right away. So, but that turned out really well. And I let people know now, and I'm not shy about that anyway, but I let people know that I am hard of hearing and make sure that I hear you. And that's it.
Thank you, Rick. Ellen? Ellen Simmel? Are you there, Ellen?
Ellen on
She's
mute.
muted.
Okay, well, we'll come back to Ellen. Tony?
I thought I was unmuted. Okay, I'm sorry. I had an interesting or really rough experience at the beginning of COVID. I live in a complex where younger volunteers are going shopping for seniors, and I was lucky enough to have people help me. And one day this guy came with his mask, and I gave him my list and whatever. He came back, he brought me food, and he was saying something else to me, but I had no clue what he was saying. And I kept thinking that he was just saying pleasantries like, you know, have a nice day or whatever. So I just kept shaking my head, finally closed the door, put the food away, and realized that he only got some of the food in one store. He didn't go to the second store. So I thought, well, all right. And now it's an hour later, and I put my jacket on to go out for a little walk in my complex because it was really a nice day. And I opened the door, and the same gentleman with his same mask is standing outside my door. And it took almost forever, or so it seemed to me, to understand that he was saying that he had only gone to one store, but now he was coming back and needed my credit card and my list of groceries, and he was going to go to the second store. So it was a very uncomfortable feeling to realize that I really had no idea what this guy was saying to me. And I haven't really solved those kind of problems. I've had a number of them, but that was the most challenging and upsetting to me. But I'm here, I survived it.
Thank you, Ellen. Tony?
Okay,
Tony?
as
Okay.
Katherine mentioned, I've been working with hospitals, and I also want to mention that Peggy Ellertson, who's been on the National Board of Trustees, she lives in Massachusetts. She and I and two other people have been working very hard on these issues. When the masks first came out, I was pleased and concerned at the same time because I thought it would make us all have to more readily admit that we can't hear. And I think that's really important. I get a wave of fear when someone has a mask because I'm going to be totally unable to communicate with them. So I have to tell them right off the bat, I can't hear, and have to come up with other options. But I also was concerned because once we started all talking about masks, I was afraid that that would be seen, the clear mask would be seen as a panacea. All we have to do is get those in place and we're set. And first of all, it's very difficult getting them in place. But second of all, speech reading doesn't work all the time. And it doesn't work in a medical setting a lot of the time. So masks aren't a panacea either. One quick story. I worked a lot with Mount Sinai Hospital. I've gotten a mask there, and I've gotten a mask at New York Presbyterian. When I got to my last doctor appointment, the receptionist, I gave him my name, and he all of a sudden put on a clear mask. And I said, wow, how'd you know? And he said, well, you're red flagged in the electronic healthcare record. We know you have hearing loss. We're giving you a mask, which is exactly the way it should go and what I've been working towards. Okay, great, we have that. Then they take me into the back room to get my blood work done. And the nurse hands me a clear mask. And I said, why are you giving me that? She said, you have to wear it because you can't hear. And I said, no, you have to wear it. The point being, there is so much education that has to be done. And it's very frustrating. And Peggy and I talk a lot about how we would like this all eventually to be preemptive, that we don't have to ask and we don't have to educate, but that's not where it is right now. So we need to have safe, especially healthcare, or in any situation like Ellen is describing. Who knows what this man was saying? saying to her. So we have to say we can't hear, try other options, clear mask, other, but nothing is a panacea. And you also have to let people know that it's going to take some work, and then just take deep breaths and try to be patient. Thanks.
Thank you, Tony. Betty? Betty Hauk?
I have to unmute. Sorry, I have to unmute myself. So I had a medical appointment in early October, and it seemed to me that the clear masks are tricky because of all the things you mentioned. And but I wanted to be able to understand when I went to my appointment. This was at a downtown Boston, one of the big hospitals, Beth Israel. So I got this idea of making myself a sign, which I printed out on my computer. And so I wrote in big letters, "I'm partially deaf," in big letters, deaf. "Please speak slowly and articulate. Thank you." And I pinned it to the front of my shirt like this. And I thought that would be so silly that it would grab people's attention. And it did. It worked really well. And the thing is, when I've been in situations like that before, when I tell people that I'm partially deaf or have hearing loss, and I need to be able to see their faces, they'll remember for about 10 or 15 or 20 seconds, but then they'll forget. The thing about this is that it's so silly looking, pinned to the front of me, that they can't forget that because it's really eye-catching. So I found that to work really well for me in the medical setting. And I also found out that my cardiologist wears one hearing aid, which I didn't know before. So we have something in common. I wear two, but he wears one. So I just wanted to pass that on as a simple solution that worked well, at least for me in that situation.
That's a great sign, Betty. Thank you.
Thank
Art,
you.
we have a visitor from Rochester, Art Maurer.
Hi. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to share quickly. I have trouble wearing masks that go around the ear because they keep dislodging my hearing aids. And it's very hard to know when a hearing aid has popped out in very many situations. So what I ran into was an extender, which looks like this. And that goes behind my neck, okay? And I hooked the hearing aid to the extender on either side, and then I just push it up. So the hearing aid, no part of the hearing aid is near the top of my ear, and it's very comfortable to wear. So I just mentioned that because these are readily available on places like Amazon and so forth, and they're very cheap, but it's changed my life in terms of wearing a mask, and I just wanted to share that.
Can I respond to Art just for a minute? And also to Cookie. Cookie, would you wait with your ALD talk till after the second section? I meant to mention the difficulty of keeping your hearing aids on when you're wearing a mask. It is even harder with a cochlear implant if those of you who had tried. I have to wrap myself up in about 5 different layers in order to keep it on. First, I put on the mask, then I put on my cochlear implant, then I put on my glasses, which I can't see, then I put on a headband, and on top of that, because the cochlear implant is also attached to my head and the headband doesn't cover it, I wear a hat. So this is a pretty ludicrous solution to the problem of masks behind, dislodging things behind your ears, but they do, because they tangle with, if you have a behind the ear component and in the ear the component, they tangle with the connector. And I don't know any solution to that, except I have tried yours, that didn't work for me, but maybe I have the wrong shaped head for that. So anyway, I meant to show that thing that somebody gave me one too. Okay, John, back to you.
Okay, we have time for one more on this topic. Jerry?
Yes, Catherine, in response to your issue and Art's with the masks that go over the ear, there's something called a gaiter, which is a scarf, and it goes around your neck, and they come in very attractive patterns, and you simply pull it up like this, and you can take it off and put it on whenever you feel like. It doesn't affect your ears in any way. But going back to the healthcare issue, I found that most prefer the blue paper perforated masks. Just today or yesterday, I've been in a lot of healthcare settings recently. They say, take off your mask and put this one on when you enter as part of the protocol. The only other comment I'd like to make is, or two, in response to Betty Houck, there's a web app for your phone called Buzz Cards. And this is my Buzz card, which I sometimes show people when I'm having a problem. And it stays on my phone when I remember that I need to explain what my problem is. The other healthcare issue is that the mask issue is going to go away, hopefully, God willing, when the pandemic subsides. But our issue of hearing in a healthcare setting will still be with us. And so I've had issues recently where I've been face down on a flat surface and can't read any lips, or I'm having a test done, radiology, and you can't see. So patients explain, get on the chart that they have for you that you have hearing loss. And in my case, my hearing is better on my cochlear side. So I asked the nurse who's helping to please get close to my ear and speak to me on that side.
Good suggestion. I think we'll move on to the next topic. Catherine?
Yeah, just before we move on to the next topic, about gaiters, there was somewhere I was reading recently an analysis of different kinds of face coverings. And as we all know, the N95 masks are the most protective, and the paper masks, the paper surgical masks are too. Gaiters don't actually really protect you or anybody else very much.
I read that too.
Vanessa said she uses them for hiking, which is probably fine because you're not very close to anybody when you're hiking. But if you're in a closed environment, you should be careful with the gaiters because they're not the most effective. So, Rick, were you going to say something?
Just said, I've read that too, that the gaiters don't offer.
Okay, so David, let's go back to the slideshow and move on to technology. Okay, so the most universal accommodation, and the ones that we all use and that I'm using now, and I'm sure most of you are too, are captions. Somebody, I don't know who was the first person who said it, but we all say it all the time that captions are the wheelchair ramp for the deaf. So captions are as important, if not more important than ever at this particular time. And I'm going to talk about some of the different ways that we see captioning. Next slide. Okay, this is a picture that was taken of me in 2013 when my book came out. And I believe this was my very first experience with CART captioning. It was arranged by the hearing loss group that I was speaking to. And I was just astonished by it, that this existed. I couldn't hear the questions that were being asked to me from the audience, so I would have to turn around and read the CART screen behind me, which was not a very good solution, but luckily it was a friendly audience. CART is, especially when you have a CART provider like Lauren and the people who work with her, is really, I think, the most essential tool for people with hearing loss. So CART stands for Communication Access Real-Time Translation, and it is becoming better and better known thanks to advocacy from people like us. Slide. Most of the time, however, we don't have access to CART, but in the past year or so, particularly during the pandemic, but beginning before that, we've some other very, very good captioning devices have come along, and most of them do require a smartphone. For Android phones, Google has an app called Live Transcribe, which is what you're seeing here on this screen. It transcribes quite accurately, depending on background noise, which I'll talk about in a minute, speech live. And you hold your phone up and it records your speech and it records whoever you're talking to's speech. And it's a very, very good solution. Google was the first to come out with it, I think. You can't see it, or at least I can't see it because the captions are hiding it. But on Google Live Transcribe, they have a little icon at the bottom that says dog. And that means that somebody's dog is barking and they're identifying that for you. For Apple phones, David, can you move to the next slide? For Apple phones, the Apple iOS system works with Otter AI, and I think most of us do have Apple phones, at least in our New York City chapter, we seem to. So on the right here is what live captioning looks like on Otter. Otter does break up the one speaker from the next speaker. It also saves a transcript of the conversation that you're having. It allows you 600 free minutes a month of use, which is more than enough for most people. However, if you're me and you forget to turn it off, you can pretty quickly run through those 600 free minutes. I also was talking to a lot of people I needed to hear on Otter in the past few months. So you can subscribe. It's $10 a month, and then it's unlimited access to captions. Otter, I use it at the dinner table with my family. I had it right there during Thanksgiving dinner. I would never have understood a word that anybody said. There weren't that many of us, but they were loud. There was my 2 adult children and their spouses. Everybody had a lot to say, and Otter was able to keep up with them. It also, you can even, and back to the pharmacy situation, you could even use it in a situation like that. One drawback of Otter is that it has to be used on Wi-Fi, or at least I've found it has to be used on Wi-Fi. If it's not on Wi-Fi, it takes a recording and it will later give you a transcript, but transcript after the conversation isn't what most of us are looking for. Mostly we're looking for live transcribe. And so that's what these 2 apps provide. And I've found in particular that Otter really saved me from many, many difficult situations. I also found, however, that Otter is not able to understand very well in noise. So if you're in a noisy place, if you're in a hospital, in an emergency room, even if you can get online in the hospital, and most do offer patient online passwords, Otter's not going to keep up. And it's going to be even more frustrating than never knowing that Otter existed. The next slide, David. Okay, InnoCaption has been around much longer than these other 2. I think a lot of people are familiar with InnoCaption. It is a free service, as are many of these services. These are all free for people who have hearing loss, as is a home landline that's captioned is free for people with hearing loss. InnoCaption has live captioners, and they also, in periods of heavy use, may bounce you over to automated speech recognition, which is nowhere as good as a live captioner. I found that the captioner, and this is probably my imagination, but the captioner seems to understand that if I'm having an important conversation and stays on longer, if I'm just chatting with a friend, I get bumped over to ASR, automatic speech recognition, very quickly. Again, you can adjust the way these appear on your phone, the font, the color, and anything else. And InnoCaption works on both iOS and Android phones. And I really recommend it. I use it over my home landline caption phone always because it's more accurate. We have the next slide. Okay, so I am interested, and I think we all are, on what new technologies other people here have tried. I think there are things, I think these things are moving so fast that it's very hard for us to keep up. So if you've used some new technology successfully, can you tell us about it? What works, what doesn't? And then we'll come back after this. So John's going to take over from here.
Okay, well, in the previous section, it seemed Cookie had something she wanted to talk about that was really technology. So we'll start with Cookie, and other people who have things they want to talk about with technology, please put your name in the chat box.
Yes, hi. Okay, so I do use, since we just talked about InnoCaption, I do use InnoCaption quite a bit. It's really great with the phone. And I even tried using the desk view option, which I could put it like right now, if there was no captions on this, on a regular Zoom call, a Zoom video, you could dial the captions from your phone like regular, and as well as have like a you could put it also up on your computer. So it's called a desk view. So as long as you have, I can't even think now, but it's really good because you can put the captions on if you're doing a Zoom call where there's no captions. It's called desk view. However, I'm wondering if anybody has used that, because I've been using the desk view. Sometimes it gives me feedback, a lot of feedback, like wow, 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 and and I have to stop it. So my question to the group would be, is anybody else using desk view, and are they finding the same challenges with the desk view? I also find InnoCaption sometimes. I'm so glad I'm on this because I have a lot of concerns. InnoCaption, sometimes it'll just stop captioning. It'll just stop in the middle of the conversation, and I'm trying to find, to scroll up, and there's just nothing coming out. So those are my issues. So maybe I should get that out of the way first. But I am using, as far as for face masks, what I was talking about earlier with face masks, I ended up using my flex spending money from my job to purchase some technology, and it really, really helps me with face masks, because forget face masks, I just can't, I think I'm going to really try that sign thing, because I think that would be helpful. But it seems like it's really hard to really hear, and I have to use a device. I have a cochlear implant on one side and a regular hearing aid in the other. And so at first I went to CHC and I got a simple device, and it's called the Oticon. I wear an Oticon hearing aid. So I got a simple device just for that hearing aid, which was great. However, it doesn't communicate with the other side of my cochlear implant side. So it only works on one side, which I thought would be good because it's my better side. But with face masks, it still wasn't good enough. So I ended up getting a second thing, which is more expensive, and it's called my cochlear implant is a advanced bionic. So I got a larger MyLink, and this link connects the cochlear implant to the hearing aid. So I hear out of both ears. And this is the most effective thing that's helped me with speaking to people that wear face masks. And what's good is that I wear one thing. I wear this around my neck.
Okay.
Mhm.
Cookie,
Yeah.
we are running a little bit out of time, so if you can just wrap it up, please.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, so it's just, they only wear one thing and I can hear out of both ears. So it's a beautiful thing. So I'm done. Thanks so much.
John, can I interrupt to ask
Sure.
Cookie? Cookie if she would write in the chat section what it
Sure.
was that you got, because I have exactly the same issue you do, an Oticon and Advanced Bionics, and it never occurred. I also have a Roger pen, but it never occurred to me to use the whatever it is. So would you write in the chat section? what it is that you
Absolutely,
got?
no problem.
Okay. Also, I want to say one thing about using Otter on when there are no captions. I just take my phone and set it up on my desktop, on my laptop, and all I see are the captions. I hear, the words from my desktop, but I'm seeing the captions on my phone, and that works pretty well.
Okay, Roseanne O'Connor. Roseanne, can you unmute?
Yes, I managed to. So there is this other one that's called Live Transcribe as well, unfortunately, but it works for iPhone. And there's a little, elephant. I'll open it. And it's fairly good, fairly accurate, and you can put it down so it flips, so the person talking to you, you can read it in one way or the other way, and it keeps the transcript as well. I find that very useful. Also, the Microsoft Translator is another very useful thing that you might want to try. My last thing is that InnoCaption, I watched a webinar last week, and they added the Spanish, and now they are adding Portuguese. So that's a big advancement for all of us. That's it.
Thank you. Demi? Are you there, Demi? Okay. I know that Ruth also wanted to say something.
What Ruth wants to say is that I've been using the microphone on my iPhone to transcribe conversations. I've been in a situation where there was no Wi-Fi available, and I used that, and it worked fine. So that's just another option. And I just want to go back to my famous line that I tell everybody. Please don't talk to me unless you can see the whites of my eyes. That includes when you're wearing a mask, because they are looking directly at you, and it works.
Thank you, Ruth. Demi, are you with us? Okay.
Hello, can you hear
Yes.
me?
Yes.
Hi, this is just a random, I just had a problem with the caption call, and the closed caption doesn't always keep up. So I think because of a COVID, the relay delay a lot slower. So that's the only issues that I had with that technology. That's it.
Thank you. Carol, did you have something you wanted to add? Carol Karasek?
No, John, if I responded, it was an accident.
Okay, you mentioned that you use a microphone that comes with your hearing aids, and that's been useful with masks.
Oh, okay. I put that in the chat. I mean, I don't know how many people have the microphone that comes with their hearing aids, but I find it incredibly good with talking to somebody. I put the mic, I ask them to hold the mic, and their voice, even through the mask, streams right into my hearing aids.
Thank you. Mary Whalen posted that she's also had problems with Caption Call and was told that they've had technical problems. I had problems with them as well early on in the pandemic, and I think that they may have had reduced staff because of the pandemic, but also I think there's been an avalanche of calls and increased usage of it, which has probably been a little bit of an issue for them. So this is not a unique problem to. Okay, and Alan Ketzer is posting. I don't know if he wanted to talk, but he said that high bandwidth usage can cause delay or interruption in any device. Nachama Karp, did you want to talk?
Oh, sure. Hi, thank you. Silent C, Nahama. My question is not that people are putting on stage performances or operas now, but I was wondering if anybody had any good experience with a captioning app or device in those situations where, captioning is not, a cart is not available for operas or plays, musicals, things like that.
Jerry has a comment about that, and then I think we will move on to the next topic.
Yes,
Actually, Jerry's comment also relates to the next topic.
Thanks, John. Yes, as many may know, we were able to work with the theater community in New York on a system called GalaPro, and regional theater companies around the country are also beginning to install it in their venues, particularly if they're well established, well funded. It's not that expensive, but it gives you captions on your smartphone. The only other option for those venues, if they're doing limited runs of live entertainment, is to hire a cart provider or engage someone to offer some technical speech to text service and put it on the web or stream it directly to your device at your seat.
Okay, I think we do need to move on to the next topic. So, Catherine?
Okay, David. While David is bringing up the last part of my slideshow, I want to say that there's really a lot of very interesting information in the chat box. And I think that when we do a summary of this meeting, that it would be really helpful that whoever does the summary go into the chat boxes. A lot of it is about using different brands of hearing aid and cochlear implant, and how to get around that problem. There's some other things that I've never heard of that people mentioned in the chat box. So we'll try to include those in a summary. So advocacy is the third part of this topic. And ordinarily, most of the time we think of advocacy in terms of institutions, as Jerry was just talking about, theaters, and we promote loops in buildings. We've been very successful in New York in getting hearing loops in a number of public spaces and in some theater groups and big theaters. And so that all really remains important. We are not right now going to any of those places. So now advocacy in this era is really self-advocacy. It's personal one-to-one advocacy. And so that's what I'm going to talk about in this section. Okay, David. David? Okay. Actually, I got ahead of myself. What I did want to say is that there is a saying in advocacy, and that is that in normal times, this is what we say, accessibility alleviates disability. And what that means is that we alter the environment to accommodate the disability. And so that it's the responsibility of whoever is in charge of the environment to make sure that it is as it has the accessible things that we need, either wheelchair ramps or looping or captioning devices. It also includes two things like lighting and seating design, and then also just a lot of signs and written materials and installations of hearing loops. So these are all going to come back to being an issue. They aren't right now, but so now on to personal advocacy, David, the next slide. I think, yeah, let's go back. We are all spending a great deal of time online. I think at least those of us who are here on these Zoom meetings probably are on a lot of other Zoom meetings. So there are online forums that provide captions. As we've just discussed in this previous section, there are online forums that don't. And then there are solutions when no captions are provided. And that also was just covered in this discussion, but we can go on. But can we have the next slide? Okay, so Sherry Eberts, I don't know if Sherry is here tonight. Many of you may have seen the petition that she started, which is to ask online video conferencing platforms to provide captions in this period for people with hearing loss, or for anybody who asks for it, without having to pay for it. Most the corporate version of online platforms often offer a captioning as an option, but for those of us who just use our own personal Zooms, there is not captioning as an option. So Sherry's been incredibly successful with this campaign. The last time I heard, she had 74,000 signatures. I wanted to give you the URL for this, but we couldn't figure out how to get it onto the screen. So what I would like to suggest is that, Sherry just commented that it's 76,000 signatures right now. So you 50 people here in this meeting can just add your names as well by going on our website, www.hearinglossnyc.org. And it's right on the home page. It's very easy to click on, and it's a really good campaign. So Sherry might want to talk about this a little bit more when we get to the comments section. But thank you, Sherry, from all of us. We have the next slide, David. So we also, self-advocacy is very important in medical settings, and we've also just talked about that. There are things besides hospital situations that arise though. And so I just want to talk about that for a little bit. Telemedicine has become much more popular in this period, and teleaudiology is also become more popular in this period, and in fact is thought to work very, very well. So telemedicine allows you to look at your doctor face to face, not have to try to understand through a mask. It also means that if you're not in town with your doctor, unless you need a physical exam, there's no reason you can't just discuss that over a video conference. In-person doctor visits, we've kind of covered in the previous section, but again, say right from the start, or wear Betty House sign that you have hearing problems, hearing loss, and prepare in advance for it. Tell the office that you have hearing loss. Ask if they have clear masks. Ask if they'll wear your clear mask when you come to visit. Emergency situations are much harder. And I think that's where a lot of us get tripped up, because we're not expecting to have to end up in the doctor's office or the dentist's office, and then you really have to wing it. So that may be something people want to talk about in this next chat session. I actually can't read what point number 4 is because it's behind the captions. So if anybody else can see it. Oh, scheduled hospitalizations. Yes, that's again what Tony was talking about before, and we've really covered that. And then also, whenever possible, if you're going to a new doctor, give them a written description of your needs so that it goes into your chart, so that you don't have to explain it every time around. David, can we have the next one? Okay, that's all I have to say about this issue, but I want all of us now to talk about self-advocacy. And this can, I think from here on, the conversation can basically cover all of the things we've talked about. So feel free to move on from self-advocacy and go back and talk about technology. And I'm now going to ask David to turn off the PowerPoint so that we can all see each other.
Well, thank you for that, Catherine. That was great. Before we move on, I just mentioned that Ruth posted in the chat box that rev.com also does captioning. And I would certainly want to thank David Landsbergers, who's one of our board members, who is hosting this meeting and taking care of sharing the screen and all of those things. And also to ask if it's possible to save, at the end of the meeting, save the chat box information, because I think that would be a valuable resource for some of us. So Jerry Bergman would like to talk about, give a few examples of self-advocacy.
John, couple of examples currently. I do a great deal of advocacy, as most of the New York chapter members know. Just last week on New Year's Eve, Met Opera broadcast a very well-produced gala with 4 of their stars in different parts of the world. But none of the dialogue had captioning. And that's a specific example of what we face, as Catherine had pointed out earlier, with the proliferation of online media that we can stream. Providers don't generally think about the needs of people with hearing loss when they're moving from live to online presentations. So we have appealed to the Met, and we're pursuing that in hopes that they will get the message and provide captions on the entertainment content that they provide. One that's very easy, if some of you are like me and you depend on television captions, if they fail, the cable system is responsible, but the easiest way to get a prompt response is to file an online petition with the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. It literally takes 5 minutes. You'll get a response within a couple of days, and then they will transmit the inquiry and the complaint, assuming there's a complaint, and that gets the attention of the cable system. I just had a recent example of that was resolved to my satisfaction, but it necessitated them giving me a new cable box that was more sophisticated than the one I had, which kept me from seeing captions on a certain channel and a certain series that I wanted to watch. So that's another example. Bottom line is everybody should speak up politely, but ask for access under the law, and contact me if they're not sure what the law covers and what it doesn't cover, or a lawyer if you know somebody who works in the field.
Thank you, Jerry. Marilyn Gordon. Marilyn?
Okay, sorry. Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. I know I always tell a doctor particularly, or somebody, if you ask me a question and I don't answer you, it's that I haven't heard the question. So don't assume, like, is this okay? And if I don't answer you, it means I haven't heard you. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm okay. So you have to then follow up and ask for a response. But I recently had to have a procedure where I was going to be under anesthesia. And they said, "Oh, you wear hearing aids. You want to leave? You want to take them out?" I said, "No, because I won't know if you're talking to me if I don't have my hearing aids in." And that worried me very much. And quite honestly, it made me think at the same time of other situations which I fortunately have not been in. But if I were to be in a hospital or in some situation, it's, who's going to put my batteries in my hearing aids? And if somebody has to know that. Somebody has to know that. And I know from having had a mother in a nursing home and wearing hearing aids, and every day when I had to check to make sure that they were in and that there were batteries working, and half the time they weren't. And that's very frightening. And I'm going to ask a question: has anybody addressed that, or had or been in that kind of situation? And how do you make sure that somebody's going to make sure that you can hear them? Now, it's not like glasses that people can see. You're either wearing glasses or not. And if your eyes are open, you're wearing glasses, you're seeing. But you can have hearing aids in without batteries. And how do you, I don't know, has anybody thought about that? I worry about that now. That's all.
If someone speaks up, we will come back, but Betty has something she wants to share.
Thank you. I just wanted to show a mask design. I'm a quilter, and I converted my guest room into a sewing room during COVID, and I found this design online, and it has a nose flap that hooks over the nose, which is makes it fit better. And the main thing in terms of hearing aids is that it has a continuous strap. I don't know if you can see this, but so there's two elastic straps that go around. You can put it over the top of your head or the back of your head in such a way that it does not interfere with your hearing aids. It really makes a difference. And it also fits better than the behind the ear mask, because it's snug, but it's not tight. And it also helps somewhat with fogging of glasses. So if there's some way I can communicate the information about where to find this mask design, if any of you are sewers or know people who sew, I recommend it.
Thank you. I'm just going to make a brief comment about Marilyn's story about a nursing home, and it's not really about the pandemic, but my father at the end of his life was in a senior citizens residence. He was very hard of hearing and not in full command of his cognitive abilities. And he called me and said that his hearing aids were broken. I was a couple of hours away. I drove to where he was and discovered that he had put the batteries in backwards. And for which I don't blame him. Using hearing aids is something that's very difficult, particularly for older people who may not have the manual dexterity or the vision to deal with it. So I found someone at the residence and taught him how to change the batteries, taught him how to clean wax out of the hearing aids. And it really did seem to solve the problem, having someone on site who was willing to do these things. So it is difficult. Jerry posted that his mother's nursing home lost her hearing aids. So this is a problem, but it's valuable to have someone on site at these places who can help out.
That's not always possible.
Well,
I mean,
I'm sure it's not.
My mother had had a stroke. She wasn't going to ask for her hearing aid, I had to rely on people, and the only person I could rely on was me, because I went every day and checked the hearing aid and checked the battery, checked to make sure that the battery was in, or it was in the right ear, or it wasn't upside down, or it wasn't turned on, or so these are things that personnel working in medical situations like this need to be trained in, you know, and they're not. I mean, sad to say, they're not. I asked one of the aides one day, I said, would you like me to show you how to do this? And they were terrified of the head nurse, who said, who I could never wanted anyone to learn anything. And but I kind of took one of them aside. I said, let me show you, you know, this is all you have to do. It's you know, and yes, and they lost her hearing aid several times. So she had to go through this several times. But
Yes, this is certainly a big problem, but this is again where self-advocacy comes into play.
oh,
That I
sure.
think
Oh,
you need
absolutely.
to,
Absolutely.
that you need to advocate in the nursing home for people to be, you know, and if they're not going to be properly trained by the staff, train somebody yourself is what I'm suggesting. Teach them how to change the batteries, teach them how to do these things, and ask them to come in and check periodically. So, Barbara, were you trying to say something? Maybe not. You suddenly appeared on my screen.
No, if you're talking to me,
Okay.
I was not trying to say something. Thank you.
Okay, and Roseanne mentioned that new hearing aids have or often have rechargeable batteries that you can use. So, any other comments, questions about this, about self-advocacy and issues during the pandemic?
Peggy wants to say something. I saw it in the chat.
I'd like to address Marilyn's concerns. One of the things we've learned in working on healthcare and communication access is that in general, healthcare systems are not tuned in to safety issues related to hearing loss. It's just generally not on the radar screen. And so there are no systems. There's no preemptive set of best practices that you find in places like nursing homes or hospital rooms, or even operating rooms and doctors' offices. So it's a long road ahead of us. We're working really hard to strategically tackle some of the barriers to changing the system. In the meantime, it behooves all of us to think ahead and do the things that we can do to protect ourselves. It's a big pain. And, but I think that if you're prepared, it lessens the pain. So just off the top of my head, this is totally spontaneous. You're making me think, Marilyn, about the fact that I need to make a list to hand someone if I wind up in an emergency room or, God forbid, in a nursing home. There are things that you can do to sort of get yourself ready for disaster. And then hopefully someday, probably a long time from now, things will begin to change. And what we're hoping for is to see systemic preemptive changes in the way that hearing loss is understood in healthcare settings.
Thank you, Peggy. Those are great suggestions. Ruth wanted to say something.
I've been going to services, Sabbath services with a rabbi in Portland, Oregon. And I used my Otter device until very recently when I told the rabbi about rev.com. And he promptly put it on for everyone to see. And he got several nice comments. As usual, I was the only one that was saying anything. And I have spoken to him about this before, so he wasn't surprised. The moral of the story is you just have to keep asking.
Thank you, Ruth. Carol, you wanted to say something? You have an experience you wanted to share?
I mean, self-advocacy is so incredibly important. And this is an area where I strongly believe there's no such thing as one size fits all. Everybody has to approach it in a way that works for them. And, very briefly, several months ago, I was hospitalized and I had surgery. And when I met with the surgeon pre-op, I said to him, quite honestly, I'm not at all concerned about my surgery because I have confidence in you. What I'm worried about is my hearing. And we sat down, he and his staff, and we spent a half hour mapping out a plan for how we would deal with my hearing in the hospital. And I just have to say that everything worked out perfectly. But I had a doctor that listened to me. And I would hope that everybody could have a similar experience. And my biggest issue, very quickly, because I was so worried about what would happen to my hearing aids when I was in surgery, because obviously they had to come out, and I was uncomfortable with anybody in the hospital with my hearing aids. So we devised a plan. My sister, who was in the waiting room, had my hearing aids. The plan was for her to, when she came to visit me post-op, to give me my hearing aids. Well, anyone who has surgery, when you come out of it, you're totally out of it. I had no idea what was going on. And all of a sudden, I was being wheeled to my room, and somebody was talking to me, and I said, "Oh my God, I can hear. Did you fix my hearing in the operating room?" And it turned out that the nurse, one of the nurses went out, got my hearing aids, and managed to put them in. I had no idea. So, I mean, that to me was just the most heartening thing.
That's a great story.
Well, even though they didn't fix your hearing, it's great to hear some success stories. Ellen wanted to say
Yeah,
something.
I just wanted to mention one thing that we can all do when we see our doctors. We can advocate for the clear masks. When I went to my doctor's office, I was telling her that there is such a thing as clear masks. She said, "Yes, I know of them, but I don't know how our hospital can get them." So I got all the information from you, John, and I sent it all to my doctor, and she sent it over to the administration, and they are in the process of getting clear masks at Mount Sinai.
Great.
Thank you. Sherry Eberts posted in the chat that a good suggestion: you can place your hearing aids in a Ziploc bag and pin them to your gown so they don't get lost. So if you're going to the hospital, think about that. I'll briefly share a success story I had with a doctor. I'm going to be getting a cochlear implant in the near future. I was actually scheduled for next week, but decided to postpone until I can get vaccinated. But when I went to Dr. Alexiadis, and I would like to say how wonderful he is, that I went in, my wife was in the waiting room, she was not allowed in. And our plan was that she would keep her phone on, I would keep my phone on, and that she would be able to hear what the doctor was saying. In fact, that didn't work well because it was so noisy in the waiting room. And when I explained this to the doctor, he instructed his staff to have my wife come into the room, which is something he didn't have to do, but it was really very special that he allowed that. But it would not have happened if I hadn't advocated about the problems I was having. Anybody else with things they'd like to add? Okay, well, this has been a terrific meeting. Hearing all of your stories has been, I think, valuable to all of us. Catherine's presentation has been a very helpful way of framing all of the comments. Before I finish, Tony has a quick comment. Tony?
Yes, I just wanted to add, because when you just said, John, that the doctor had let your wife come in and that's something that he didn't have to do, one of the things that we forget, and sometimes we're squeamish about it because we try to be positive, is that they do have to let your wife come in. They have to do whatever you need so that you can understand communication accurately, whatever it takes That's the bottom line. And if they want to give you a pocket talker, but you're like me and you need cart, they have to give you cart, whatever it takes. So I think we all need to be a little more educated about that. And that's something that our healthcare group is going to work on as well. But just think about the fact that you have to be safe. And unless you can communicate with your physician, you won't be able to be safe. And you can also explain that to your physician as well. So that's really something that we have to remember. We're not
Well,
asking for a favor. And
yeah.
also our significant others, caregivers, friends who come with us and are involved in our care have a right to those very same accommodations, even if they have hearing loss and we are hearing. So make sure you get what you need. You're not asking for a favor.
Thank you for reminding me of that. And there is still, I would like to still praise Dr. Alexiadis for this, because many doctors would not have been so easily forthcoming. I didn't have to I did have to, say that I had a need, but I didn't have to threaten lawsuits. I didn't have to do anything, but it would not have happened if I hadn't expressed a need. And that's part of what I think our message is about this. So again, as I was saying, thanks to everyone, thanks to all of you, thanks to Lauren, to David, to Katherine for providing a framework for this. It was wonderful to see so many new faces tonight. To learn more, if you want to learn more about HLAA, to join or to donate to help us continue our activities, please go to the chapter website, which is hearinglossnyc.org. You can also go sign Sherry's petition. Our next meeting will be February 2nd, when Dr. Maura Cosetti of Mount Sinai Hospital and vestibular therapist Jennifer Kelly of New York Eye and Ear Hospital will speak about the causes, diagnosis, and the treatment of balance problems and dizziness, as well as on the ongoing research and exercises aimed at addressing these problems. So stay tuned for the Zoom link, which you will receive in an email when we get closer to the event. And stay safe, stay healthy, and now we can go watch election returns. So good night to all.
Thank you, John.
There was just a question. There was a question. Previous meetings that have been recorded are available for viewing. If you go to our website and look at programs, for the ones that are available, there is a YouTube link that will connect you to those meetings. Thank you.
John.
Oh, and there's a post here from Emma Stern, who is a disability rights attorney. She said that for those who do not know, Disability Rights New York has congressional authority to conduct investigations and monitor projects. They represent individuals in open class action lawsuits to fight for macro issues, and they'd love to collaborate in the future and serve as a resource. So thank you for that, Emma, and her email is there.
John, this is Jerry. Just to add to that, we have a friend at Disability Rights New York in attorney Mark Fliedner, and Mark will be one of the 3 speakers at the March webinar that I mentioned earlier that HLA National will be promoting. The other 2 are esteemed disability rights attorney John Waldo and New York State's Director of Disability Rights. So we have the city, the state, and the federal covered at the March seminar. So look for that email.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
I'd just like to say that the polls are closing in Georgia, if anyone wants to go.
Oh.
Leave this meeting and see what's going on in Georgia.
Okay, good night to all.
Thank you, John.
Bye, thanks everybody.
Good night.